Hi, it's Christy of So to Speak, and welcome back to the Closet series. We have a repeat guest in the closet, and the timing could not be any better. Jackie Michael, parenting expert, author of Hooray for Parenting right here, therapist, mother, grandmother, and all around just a fantastic lady, is here to share her insight, her wisdom with us on everything from how to teach our children genuine gratitude while we also relearn it ourselves. We also jump right into discussing the importance of giving our children our presence over presence. So our undivided attention over material goods. And it's not either or, it's definitely quality over quantity for both. And we naturally weave in our own gift giving guide. We give you some gift ideas of how you can merge the two, your presence and presence. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. And lastly, we bring it all home to highlight once again the power of story. We are all in this space of handling the holidays in a way that we've never had to do it before. And Jackie really reminds us of how much we are able to reconnect with the people we love through story. So do you have anything to say about story? What you love about stories?
All the people.
All the people in the stories?
And all the animals.
And the animals. So if you can weave in some animals in your stories too, I mean, the four-legged family members need love as well. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation.
One of the things, the challenges for us in the midst of all the stress is to look at our underlying assumptions about how life is supposed to be. That we've lived with kind of a worldview that the world is organized to make us comfortable, happy. You know, life's been pretty easy for us in this country. And I actually noticed with some older kids, like teenagers, I mean, this is like a life shock to them, that suddenly the things that were just automatic that they were going to have are no longer available. So I think one place to start for every parent is to challenge one's thinking about what we automatically deserve. And this is a tough conversation to look at. But I think, as I was saying, I've been looking at the direct care workers who are essentially first responders or essential care workers, how in the midst of the challenges that they have, do they keep the energy and the commitment and the positive spirit to keep serving, being of service. And there are models throughout history and in different cultures where people have faced terrific adversity. And somehow in the midst of that, for those people who were able to look at what is my purpose, what is the meaning in my life, who am I called to be? And that really, as a parent, that same question, what am I committed to in terms of my relationship with my children? Who do I actually need to be for them in the middle of this crisis? So you challenge your own thinking rather than just buying into the assumptions that we shouldn't have to deal with this, which I think, you know, really all of us, like, this isn't fair. Why is this happening to us? But life is challenging. And how do we build resilience? How do we build a capacity? How do we grow from the experience? And that's a choice we have, because we can either be done in, depressed, miserable, or we can say, okay, how can I grow? Or how can I be a better parent right now? How can I bring forth more to my children?
Yes.
kind of predisposition to go for the negative over the positive, that we're hardwired. Our survival instinct really is to look out for what's wrong and what's dangerous. And as I often say, if we were out in the forest and a bear is running after us, we don't want to stop and think, we want to act. So we're automatically programmed to be negative, to be reactive. And so it really takes a commitment and intention to build the hardwiring in our brains for positivity. So that's kind of a background conversation to keep in mind. And so when you're breaking things down, the first thing you want to think about is rather than going for what's wrong and how do you overcome what's wrong, you want to look at what is the possibility in my relationship with my children that wasn't there before the pandemic. So one of the things we know with technology is how frequently parents are on their telephones, the kids are, playing games, everybody's together, but not together. So I think we've all learned, because we've been isolated, how important connection is with one another. But part of the connection is being fully there when they're there. And I actually wrote down, there are a couple of quotes that are in the book, but I thought they were relevant for this conversation, like as a background. So one was, this is anonymous: your children need your presence more than your presence. And so what is your presence? It's really being able to listen, setting aside the conversations, the negative conversations in your head, and being present, putting your full intention and attention on the communication with your child. And that doesn't mean it has to be in long, periods of time. It's saying to yourself, when I am with my child, be with my child. And when I can't be, say, I'm sorry, I have to attend to XYZ. When we have a little more time, we'll get back together again. So that you're making a distinction. You're not just answering the phone when it rings and ignoring your child who's in the room. So I think that's one thing. And then there's a whole lot of ways to be creative about how to be with your child. And actually, one of the things I should mention is I'm going to be having a workbook, a companion workbook, coming out pretty soon that will be a companion to Hooray for Parenting. And in it, there's a chart I put in with some suggested ideas of conversation starters with children. And years ago, I had a father say to me, I said, you need to be talking to your son about gratitude and writing thank you notes. And he said, well, how do I start? How do I talk to him? And I think a lot of parents don't know how to talk to their kids. So that's another thing to work on. How do you talk to kids? How do you not just simply give advice and tell kids how to be?
Or guilt them into it. Can you speak to that? Like, I feel like there's guilted gratitude. Like you should be grateful so that kids almost end up resenting or feel bad if they're not grateful. Like I hear that in my circles of friends a lot about us as adults too, but just that sense of authentic gratitude versus shaming or guilting yourself into being grateful too.
Okay. That's a big conversation.
Huge. That could be a whole other. Okay, part 3 with Jackie Michael, everybody. Coming soon.
uh, okay. So I won't go. There's a whole background conversation about, and actually this is relevant for the holiday season too, that we have created a culture in which we fostered this sense that children, as well as ourselves, should always have something more, better, different, and then we're entitled to it. So that's part of the background conversation when you say, uh, why do kids take it for granted that you're going to just give them what they want? Yeah, because we've trained them that way. And we have a culture with advertisers that essentially communicate to children, they deserve the next more, better, different toy or whatever. Um, okay, so that's one thing, and that's a whole conversation. But besides that, I think it's important to get that children aren't born being grateful. And in fact, many children don't understand what the word grateful means. So it's important to talk about the whole gestalt of this. Like what does it really mean to be grateful? And are you thankful? Do you feel joy? Because one of the ways children know about gratitude is really because it made them happy, it made them joyful. So I think to find ways to, in a sense, teach children and also to not expect them, to just be grateful because you've been so great to them or somebody else, their grandparents are, uh, to teach them that somebody else has gone out of their way for you. And, do you know how you feel when you give grandma a gift and she says thank you? So it's a whole lesson, and it takes, I would say, ongoing learning and growth, even for all of us. We
Yes.
experience gratitude more deeply, I think, the older we get, and the more focused or conscious we are of the importance of gratitude. Um, but the other piece of it is that there are certain things, for instance, having a gratitude journal, uh, insisting that your children write thank you notes and helping them from the earliest of ages. So, for instance, at very early ages, before they can write, they can draw a picture or scribble and be affirmed for, giving back, letting grandma or whoever it is, their aunt, know that this made them happy. But keeping it up. I think one of the things I've noticed is parents sometimes do that with little children. Then, by the time the kids are middle school, they don't want to do it. Uh,
Becomes one more thing to have to like argue about, or like one more
yeah,
thing
yeah.
to struggle with, for sure. Yeah.
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 I think to be understanding, because what I've noticed is that kids will go through a period where, it's a pain in the neck to read it, or just a duty or an obligation. But a little later on, they begin to appreciate things and appreciate their friends. Uh, Another part of that also, that's really, again, this would be useful for the holidays, but just in general, is helping the children from an early age contribute to others. So one of the moms that actually has, I think, she's mentioned in some way in my book, but she held a green birthday party for her little boy. I think he was 7 at the time. And she raised the possibility of a no presents uh, birthday. So his first reaction was, I'm not too keen on that. But she talked about it with him, and finally he agreed. And it wasn't that he wasn't going to get any presents, but they invited all the children to bring food, cereal, canned goods and stuff as presents to the birthday party. And then uh, they had a stack, like a real high stack of food that all the kids celebrated. And then the mother took the little boy um, to the food bank after the birthday party. So that could be done, something like that, mittens.
Or ease in. I mean, it could be a hybrid. Like if people are like, there's no way I would do that, or there's no way my kids would be okay with that. That hybrid of like smaller gift for Billy or whoever it is, and then also a donation. You know what I mean? Like that hybrid is really a beautiful option too. And but continue. So they went to the food bank.
Yeah, so that the child had the experience of giving and contributing as well as receiving. And he did receive some real presents as well, but he was thrilled.
Sure.
And that's another thing, that the children, they want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And so as an underpinning of gratitude, see, part of learning about gratitude is giving as well as receiving. And
so is. And I love that. And I love the two things that you added within there. That is really, for me, it's I don't want to say it's so novel, but I just never looked at gratitude from that perspective. Just the way you articulated it was so beautiful. Contribution, you said happiness, but I hear joy too. That gratitude is often, said in our world, like be grateful, and find what you can be grateful for, and be grateful for this and be grateful for that. But there's also that sense of being grateful when you contribute. We all know that. We all know that when we contribute, we just feel better. Like it's like, I want to say that that's humanity, right? It transcends every culture, race, gender, sex. Like you feel it when you're contributing. And there's gratitude naturally built within that. Yes. The happiness, like when you said, think of how happy you feel when you do that for grandma, or like that gratitude, or when grandma does that for you, like that gratitude. It's just such a very subtle way of shifting the vantage point of what gratitude is.
Yes. Yeah.
So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. There's another thing that comes to mind, and it is about happiness. So there's tons of research that being grateful leads to happiness, better relationships, more success in business, all of that. That's a whole conversation. But there is a book, I love this and have used this many, many times in workshops. It's called Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hansen. And he has some very simple steps. And this could be woven into how do you help children be grateful. He says, stop and find something that you find brings you joy or happiness. So it could just be a flower. This does not have to be a big thing. Are you familiar with this? It sounds like
I haven't read the book, but I'm familiar with the concept. And yes, or your friend, right? Like my like when I'm thinking about kids, right? So when I think about my kids, your friend Kellen makes you happy. Your friend Bennett makes you happy. Your friend Lucy makes you happy. That's gratitude built in.
That's right. It could be like a flower. It could be the sky, the stars. It could be anything you might see around the house, a painting or a vase. So what he suggests is you stop and pause. I think it's for 10 seconds, and that you actually focus on, let's say, the flower, and taking in what you find beautiful. And that actually physiologically changes something within you. And you can do this with exercise with children. So if you're out for a walk, even if you're in the city and there's a tree
Sure.
uh,
Or a person, or your mail carrier in the city. I mean, there's still many communities. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
So you stop, you remind yourselves or with your child, say, okay, let's stop. And let's just take it in. And let's spend some time. Could be a little worm coming out of the sidewalk. And uh, and let that experience sink in. And that actually shifts the way one feels inside. It's a fun exercise to try. Well, I think he suggests doing that for like a few seconds, 4 or 5 times a day. It's a good one for adults as well as doing with your children.
No, but kids are more likely to see the worm to remind you. You know what I mean? Like we're likely to look straight and not, and then they're the ones who are like, "Mom, look at the worm," or "Dad, look at the worm."
Yes.
So I want to just pause here for a second to just bring this home of how it can bridge over into the workplace too, because I can hear many people like, "Okay, that sounds great, but like, how many times a day am I really going to stop?" Even though it takes a few seconds. But again, you're building the same muscle. So then when you're at work, working with your team in a meeting on Zoom, brainstorming, you're building the muscle to still pause, to take in the group, to take in the person speaking, to take in the ideas, and then your gratitude is more naturally accessible.
Yes.
Can you speak to that? Just if you have any comments to just add on to that.
Well, the comment that I was thinking was that, again, we live in a culture that is so programmed to stay busy,
Yeah.
to deal with stress, that to us that's normal and automatic to be too busy to stop for a few seconds. We have to challenge our thinking because the truth is you can get up and get a cup of coffee at work. You could say, okay, take 10 seconds and experience the joy of that cup of coffee. You know, we eat and we don't pay attention to how foods really taste. You know what I mean? We just eat. It's like, again, it's expanding our consciousness in the moment.
Yes.
And and it's work. It doesn't come automatically. But again, when you have this concept or insight and start practicing it, and the thing I like about this particular way of thinking is that it's a few seconds. So I'm not asking people to sit down and meditate for 20 or 30 minutes, but, uh, you know, just take a little bit of time, seconds, a minute. And, actually that leads me into another thing that we could do with our children is to help them do some mindfulness exercises. And there is work that's done, books out there about doing mindfulness exercises with little children, kindergartners. And it's a way we could pause for ourselves, like when we're with our children, and experience that ourselves at the same time. But all this is hard work.
It,
It's
it, it is hard work, and it's hard, and I appreciate you acknowledging that because it is hard work, and it's I would look at it more like it's paying attention to doing it, right? So it's the hard work is actually making the time to do it. So a couple seconds seems so crazy, like, okay, it's only a couple seconds, but for some reason it might seem really big to add into your day. If you could add on anything in regards to just the benefits of taking those seconds, whether it's with your coffee in the morning and not being on any tech, just fully being with your coffee, being with your kid in the worm or the flower, going for the walk with no tech for 15 minutes. We're not even saying 20 or 30.
mm-hmm.
and how that, I have two parts here. So how that benefits you by building that more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll hold the second part, but just how by consistently practicing these small increments, how over time it shifts you where it becomes almost more natural.
Well, for one thing, I think we're healthier
Sure.
physiologically. There are living under constant stress and pressure, and I have to do this and I have to do that, and not paying attention to ourselves actually physiologically is not good for us. So that's one thing. And then the whole issue of finding more joy in life. Um, that that life is not just about working, getting by, and having more things.
And then dying.
And
I
then
mean, really.
right.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I think also it's so important, I believe, children want their parents to feel good about themselves, to be happy, to be fun. And that's actually more important than, buying them lots of presents or every time they nag, getting them, what it is they say they want. And so, in that sense, taking care of yourself and giving yourself time to be responsible for your own well being, physiologically and emotionally, is a gift to your children.
Yes. It so is. And I'm just thinking of, the moments of when your kids are younger, like doing a puzzle with them, just that moment. So again, just like the green party of that the woman that you were speaking of had for her child, for her son, it
Uh-huh.
doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be I'm only present with my kid and they get no presents at all.
Uh-huh.
It could be a combo. So maybe within the present, you give a puzzle, like, let's put a time in the calendar now to do the puzzle together. Or you give a tennis racket to a teenager and you say, here's an IOU book of like 5 hours of times within the next month that you get to give me to play tennis with you. So it's
That's
like this
awesome. Yeah.
super enveloped. I'm thinking of my nephews who are 14 and 16, and I love playing tennis with them. And my sister's fantastic in regards to being really cognizant of incorporating just time with them. And it doesn't have to be either or. Like, it can be that hybrid. And as we head into the holiday season, like, such a beautiful way of combining, by sure giving the Lego gift, but then also holding yourself accountable by also giving them the IOU or a little note that says, can't wait to do this with you, and really do it with them. Because
Yes.
saying it and not doing it is worse than not saying it.
That's true. That's true.
Worse than not saying it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing is that we could, and I was thinking, especially as I was thinking about what we were going to talk about, there are people who've lost their jobs and don't have a lot of money.
Sure.
And there's so much that could be more valuable even than buying stuff. And one of the things I was thinking about was, well, actually, because I've done this with my grandson for many years, is we make Christmas cookies leading up to Christmas. It's like one of our special times together. And, I actually, there's another woman who, out of having read the book, decided with her teenage grandchildren, but this could be like teenage and nieces and nephews, that she would ask them to write letters to her and tell her what was going on in their life. And then
I love that. Go on. Oh, I love it. Oh,
so she would write back, she writes her letter about her life or what's going on. She said it's been wonderful, wonderful. These are kids that are at a distance, which is, instead of, well, it's wonderful to get on Zoom calls and stuff, it's there's a way that the letter writing is
Oh,
another way to connect.
yeah.
Yeah, and children could also draw things, make collages, and send those. Because one of the things that the way gift giving has evolved, at least as children get middle school and teenagers, is there is nothing tangible. You know, you get online, you buy a gift card,
Yes.
you the kids want music, um, they just download the music. It's not like you give a CD or something like that. All those old things are kind of obsolete. And so thinking of ways that that well, both for us as adults and children can actually do something that you can touch and feel and that communicates and makes a difference.
Yeah. And I love, so I'm just going to throw out a few more ideas came to my mind when you were saying that. So I just want to throw them out for people who may want to run with them, or it might then give them something to think about for gift
Yes.
giving too. It's like when you were talking about music, like there's so much, again, you can do with a hybrid with that. If you have a teenager, you can give them a card for whatever your music platform is. And then say, let's make a playlist for the road trip we're going to take in the summer, or make a playlist for going away for the weekend to go skiing. And awesome. Okay. So that's that. Or for younger kids, like, let's make a freeze dance playlist. Here's the $15 or $20 for the gift card, and then we can use it offline together. So
Mm-hmm.
I just think bringing home that it's so not either or. There's such a beautiful way to hybrid it. And if people are listening and that just like, oh, here's an idea, just to keep that going, because I just love everything you're saying in regards to the combining of it. So which actually brings me to one last question that was the second part of what led us from this conversation, which I don't remember now, but it's just the interconnectedness. You and I, that's very important to both of us, and it's very real to both of us, and I think to a lot of people, but I feel like it's very often it's easy to forget that. We're hurried, we're busy, we're running in, we're running out, we're not realizing what our effect is on people. And it's not about being so conscious of it that you're not allowing yourself like to err as human kind of thing. But do you have any last thoughts or ways to bring home the beautiful idea that we are all interconnected, and right now at this state in our world and right before the holidays when things get just nutty and wild, just some ways that people can remind themselves of the beauty of that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that as you're pointing to, really, we tend to think of ourselves as isolated. We're a self here, and we're kind of like the center of the universe. So I think that it really, again, I think that to expand our thinking, and I think the pandemic has really helped bring this home, that just being isolated and not connected, people are getting depressed and sad and lonely, and kids are missing being with their friends. And so it highlights that our connections are critical to who we are, and that who we are is a function of who we're surrounded with. And in terms of the holidays, it points to the importance of seeing ourselves, having our families see themselves as part of a bigger tradition, whether it's the spiritual, religious tradition, whether it's the family traditions. They're so critical to our sense of who we are and the continuity with the past. Um, so for families to pay attention, if they don't already do this, to um, sharing with their children what were things like when they were kids at Christmas or Hanukkah. What do we want to bring in terms of new traditions and new ways of connecting as we're in the middle of this pandemic, and trying to be creative,
Yeah.
recognizing that none of us are in this alone in life, and we're dependent on one another, and we're dependent on all the people who serve us, the grocery clerks, the postman, um, the essential workers, everybody. So that's a way of really highlighting and building a bigger picture.
Absolutely could not agree with you more about the underrated and completely immediate connection of stories. The
Mm-hmm.
simple question of asking, like, even what was your favorite Christmas present or Hanukkah gift or tradition or whatever it is to a grandparent or
Mm-hmm.
parent. It also humanizes when you look at grandma or grandpa who's 70, 80 years old. You're like, oh, you used to be a kid. Like there's this weird kind of shift, like,
Oh yeah,
oh, you had a
yeah.
doll or you love trains too or whatever it is.
uh,
It just humanizes them. And so I feel like leaning into, if anybody takes, there's so many wonderful nuggets with you, Jackie, always, but I feel like one that is just so in just incorporates everything, the interconnectedness and the gratitude and the love and the connection is that sharing stories, like
yes,
sharing, there's so much within that. And there's ritual and there's tradition and there's insight and curiosity and creativity. There's just so much in that. So thank you for reminding us all of that. It's very necessary.
yes, absolutely.
So Jackie, we often hear how COVID has done so much to us, and it's, you know, we can get together and all have like an anti-COVID party all the time. But I'm wondering if you could share one thing that COVID has done for you.
It's challenged me to look more deeply at how we live in the face of adversity and bring meaning and joy in spite of what's going on. And so I'm just much more mindful of the positive things. And every time I catch myself wanting to complain, uh, or feeling sad, I remind myself of the beauty of the fact that we have food to eat, that there are people who don't, that we're just all the gifts that are just automatic parts of our lives that I might not necessarily take the time to, as I was saying before, let it sink in because I'm so busy and there's so much to do and so forth. So I think that's something that I really treasure about all this, and friendships. I've had this really um, deepening sense of the value of friends that are far and wide, around all over the country and some overseas. So lots of gifts in all of this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too. It's a privilege, really. Thanks, Christy.